So let's talk about field observations and taking good field notes. So why are field observations important? For one, they involve systematically observing and recording behaviors, interactions, and environments in their natural setting. And that's key. So while a lot of psychologists, for example, might do lab-based experiments, sociologists tend to prefer to see people in their natural social context. Sort of like National Geographic, but instead of observing animals out on the tundra, we're observing humans within their societal environments. It's super helpful because you can get deep contextual insights that an interview or a survey might miss. People will often lie to you or lie to themselves in interviews or surveys, but if you observe their behavior in a natural setting, you tend to get a more objective, accurate perspective. It captures unfiltered, real-time data on social behavior. And if you are literally recording, you can capture body language, tone, you can map out spatial dynamics that really enrich the research. For example, you can survey students about their study habits, or you could observe students, student interactions in a library, and learn more about those study habits. So let's talk about types of field observation. You can think of this as a 2x2 matrix. You have to decide the degree to which you are going to be a participant observer or a non-participant observer. And then you also need to decide if you're doing structured observation or unstructured observation. And so you can basically be in any of these quadrants. So participant observation, let's start with that. Participant versus non-participant. If you are a participant, it's immersive and engaged. So you're actively participating in the setting. It's best for understanding lived experiences firsthand. For example, maybe you volunteer at a community center while you're studying social support networks. There is the risk of bias due to researcher involvement. If you join a community and become part of that community, sometimes there becomes this temptation to really want to view it in a positive light. If it becomes your in-group, then you have to pay extra attention to the objectivity that you bring to your observations. Now, many people will be a non-participant observer. So if participant observation is all about immersive and engaged observations, this is more detached and objective. The researcher observes from a distance without engaging. It's best for studying natural, unaltered behaviors where you don't want to interfere or change the behavior of the people you're observing. Maybe you're interested in interactions in public spaces and you sit in a coffee shop to study how strangers initiate conversations. One challenge is that you may not have as much access to the participants' thoughts or intentions. If you're not talking with them, interacting with them, participating with them, you might have to make assumptions about why they're doing what they're doing. You don't necessarily get the benefit of being able to just talk to them and see it through their eyes. Okay, so that's one choice you have to make, is the degree to which you will be a participant or non-participant observer. Second, are you going to do structured observation or unstructured? So structured usually comes with a predefined checklist. It's best for comparative studies. You want to study two environments and you have a checklist of things you're looking for, or frequency analysis, how often certain behaviors happen, and you're literally counting. It almost adds a little quantitative dimension to an otherwise qualitative method of collecting data. Maybe, for example, you're studying classroom behavior and you literally are counting how many times students raise their hand or how long each question is. One challenge is that you can miss unexpected or nuanced behaviors. If you have a pretty rigid checklist and you're only looking for those behaviors, then there's other things you may not have on that list that you miss. Now, unstructured observation is the opposite. So rather than some predefined checklist, it's very flexible and exploratory. It's open-ended. There's no strict format. The researcher just records what they see as they go. And this is great for emerging themes and patterns. Maybe it's a new area. It's more exploratory. And so, that's one of the benefits. It's flexible and exploratory. If there's a subculture you want to study and you don't know anything about them, just go in with some unstructured observation and start taking notes of what you see. An example might be observing how people navigate public space without a specific focus. And you're observing the way people move about and interact. One challenge, though, is your data can become overwhelming and hard to analyze. If you don't have a clear focus, then anything could be data. And then at the end, you have all of these field notes, and it can be hard to code them for themes if your notes are all over the place. Nevertheless, both of these have strengths, whether it's a very structured approach, a very unstructured approach, or something in the middle. So I want to emphasize a few tips on writing effective field notes. Yes, you can just go out in the field and start taking notes, and maybe you have a loose focus of what you're looking for. Really, the best notes start with a bit of organization, some intentionality. And so generally, I recommend taking 3 types of notes, and they're very distinct. The first are descriptive notes, and this is what the majority of your notes should be. They're objective. You're not saying why something is happening. You're just reporting what you're seeing, reporting what people are doing in that natural social setting. And descriptive notes can come in 2 forms, structured and unstructured type of descriptive notes. So if it's structured descriptive notes, you'll usually, like I mentioned, with a checklist, have defined measurement strategies to record observations in a very consistent way. So maybe in your structured notes, you have a frequency count, counted 4 gestures in 2 minutes, or duration, you timed a 2-minute exchange, or intensity, rated engagement level as a 4 out of 5, because you have little scales, behavioral observation scales you're using. So those can be very helpful in getting concrete data, especially if you're comparing different sites. Or you could have unstructured, open-ended descriptive notes, just what you see and hear without the preset metrics or checklists. At 3:00 p.m., 2 people sat together, 1 gestured while speaking, and you're writing what you see. The first main kind of field notes are the descriptive notes. They're objective, and you're just writing what you see, and you can write these in either structured or unstructured formats or a blend. The second kind of notes are interpretive notes. They're almost like preliminary analysis. You reflect on possible meanings of some of the behaviors you observe, right? So for example, the 2 seemed deeply focused on a task, likely discussing work or something. So if you think they're talking about work, now maybe you don't know for sure, but you're putting ideas in there. Maybe you see something that gives you an idea for a theory you could link to. But these are sort of the, thinking to yourself about what you're seeing. So the descriptive notes are an objective accounting of what you see. The interpretive notes are a more subjective preliminary analysis, starting to give yourself some aha asides that you might come back to later. And then lastly are reflective notes. These are your personal reactions. This helps you stay objective and unbiased. You want to try to capture your own biases, your emotional responses, or any challenges you have during your observation. For example, I realized I paid more attention to the loud interactions. I might have overlooked quieter participants. Something like that. Or I felt uncomfortable in this setting. I was the only person of your gender or race or religion or something. So you're trying to be honest with yourself and the fact that you carry lenses and values into a setting. And so it can help you later when you look at your notes, especially your descriptive notes, you can temper that with whatever reflective notes you had about your own personal reactions. Descriptive notes can be unstructured or structured, an objective accounting of what you see. Interpretive notes, these are subjective ideas of why you think you're seeing what you're seeing, a bit of preliminary analysis or some ideas, aha moments. And reflective notes, these are your personal reactions, trying to capture your own biases and emotional responses. So field observations offer valuable insights into social behavior, but you want to choose the right type of observation based on what your research goals are. They're not all the same, but be sure to take detailed, well-structured field notes with a little planning before you go in. Your notes will be a lot better, knowing if you're a participant or non-participant, if you're doing structured or unstructured note-taking. Balance the objective description, the interpretation, and the self-reflection in those notes.